So among the things I attempt to do is with these podcasts is to talk about things that I think don't get enough coverage, if any, in the regular news and the talk shows and all that sort of thing. And I watch a lot of these shows, and I try not to just repeat what's on these shows, that you can get that same information other places. So I'm in a state of high dudgeon over the administration's aggressive deportation, and I put that in quotes, and other actions they're taking against people who they say are here illegally. And the first thing that concerns me about the press coverage, and by that I don't just mean hard news. I'm talking about opinions. I'm talking about the New York Times. I'm talking about all the talk shows on MSNBC and CNN and Fox that they don't really get into. So every time I hear somebody talk about, well, they're here illegally, they were illegal, and that's a constant talking point, excuse me, of the administration, is these people are illegal. And therefore they are criminals because they came in here illegally, and they're criminals, and we have a right to treat them as criminals. You know what the crime is that they're talking about? No one talks about what crime did they commit. Well, they came across the border illegally, so they're illegals. It is a crime to cross the border illegally. In other words, not coming across a checkpoint, not having papers, just swimming across the Rio Grande, or waiting, depending upon where you are. You know what the crime is? It's a misdemeanor. It's in the same category as a DUI. It's actually less than the punishment is substantially less than that for a DUI. It's a minor misdemeanor. And you know what they do with these minor misdemeanors? Well, if you apply for asylum, they don't prosecute you for the misdemeanor because then you are there legally. Well, I came across illegally, but I'm applying for asylum, so now I'm legally here. And that's the big problem. They need to change the asylum laws. And incidentally, just a quick digression so you know that I have some understanding of what I'm talking about. People who know me know that my specialty is antitrust and patent infringement litigation, that I've handled at every level of court, including the United States Supreme Court. But I do other kinds of litigation as well, and that includes immigration litigation. That includes asylum claims. I've been in the court. I've handled these cases up to and including the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. So I have some background in this area. And one of the things I do is, with my background, is I read the statutes. I read the statutes. That's right. And if you read the statutes, you'll see that coming across the border is a minor infraction, and they traditionally do not prosecute people for this at all. Because if they did, they'd do nothing but that. And the punishment, when they do threaten somebody with prosecution, is they pay a small fine. And that's it. That's it. That does not mean that these people deserve to be sent to a gulag in Salvador for a life sentence. They're not just returning these people and saying, well, we're going to ship them out of here because they don't have a right to be here legally, which in this man's case, he did have a right to be here legally. They're not shipping them off and just saying, okay, we're going to send them out of here, and we're going to drop them off at the bus station, which in and of itself can be a kind of a cruel punishment if you get somebody that would know a lot of them don't even speak the language. That's a pretty bad thing to do to somebody, but it's a far better thing than sending him to a Salvadorian prison to serve a life sentence. And that's what the president of Salvador indicated would happen to these people. They're going to be there for life. For the crime of the misdemeanor offense of crossing the border without papers. they get a life sentence in a gulag? I don't see anybody in the news talking about this. They just let them get away with saying, well, they're here illegally, they were criminals, they committed a crime, they came in here illegally, without talking about what the crime was that they committed. So please, you're now educated. Talk to your friends. Do whatever you can. Write to your Congress. Say, stop calling these people here as accusing them of being criminals, committing felonies, and deserving to be sent over to put in prison. And that includes this young lady from Turkey who committed the crime of speaking out against what the Israelis were doing to the Palestinians in Gaza, which means I should be in prison as well. To put her she's in prison. She's not like deported. They put her in a prison, and that's where she sits right now, without any due process. So it's not just a question of due process, which the Supreme Court is rightfully cracking down on these people, and I was thrilled to see the Supreme Court after midnight today. This is Saturday, the 19th of April, 2025, for those of you who are challenged about the dates and such. They came out and stopped directly, didn't even wait for a district court decision, went in directly and told the government not to deport this group of people they had rounded up and were getting ready to ship out of the country. They said, stop, you are not to do that. That was the Supreme Court in a 7-2 decision. And I was thrilled to see the Supreme Court is basically sending a strong message to this administration that we're not going to tolerate what you're doing here. Cut it out. I didn't even know the Supreme Court watched my podcast, but apparently they do. And good for them. Yes. Unlike my fellow citizens who ignore me altogether, the Supreme Court pays attention when I talk. Well, actually, sometimes they do pay attention when I talk because I've won those cases in the Supreme Court. But I didn't know they watched my podcast. Tells you we have a very enlightened Supreme Court. So, enough of that nonsense. Here's the other thing that annoys the hell out of me. And that is hold on a second, my phone's ringing. Sorry for the interruption. It was Justice Alito calling me to tell me how much he appreciated my podcast, which I was pleased with. And then he laughed, and I realized he was being sarcastic. Damn you, Alito. That's what happens when you put an Italian on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court should belong to Irish people and only Irish people. Not even sure all of them should be on the court. In any event, let's stop talking about racism here. Let's get back to the subject at hand. So I just want to say a little bit more about what they're doing with this fella from El Salvador in particular. The administration justifies what they've done to him on the basis that, well, he was here illegally. And they had some secondhand hearsay that he was at some point seen wearing a hoodie, which looked like he showed some support for a gang. And it was a gang, incidentally, which apparently was from upstate New York, where he had never, not upstate New York, Long Island, where he had never even been. So, based on that, they said, we were right to deport him. We had every right to deport him. But they didn't deport him. Deporting means you put him on a plane and you fly off to some other country and you dump him. Usually it's the country of origin. The problem here was that the country of origin, there's a court order saying he's not to be sent to the country of origin. So they'd have to find another country that would take this fella, and they probably could find one. But they couldn't just take him and dump him off at the Greyhound bus station or at the airport terminal. And I'm going to tell you something. They knew that. This wasn't an oversight. This was a mistake, because if it was an oversight, they would have just flown him to the airport and dumped him off. But they had a court order prohibiting that. So the only way they could get around that was to send them to a prison. So the penalty he pays is not being deported. The penalty he paid was to go to jail to serve what could very easily be a life sentence. That's what they did to get around the court order. and that doesn't get them around the court order. But that was their scheme, their clever little. These people are so clever in this White House. They're so smart. They're the dumbest people in the country running, not just dumb but inexperienced people running all these agencies and stepping all over themselves every time you turn around. I'm not going to get into the Kennedy thing, and I knew him. I knew him many years ago. Was very impressed with him. Boy, I'm not anymore. He did too many drugs, I think. I think he did too many drugs. So, but now, see, I digress. This is what happens when you get to be my age and you think about too many things. Most people my age can't even think of anything. Ha! Who needs them? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding all of you classmates of mine. I'm kidding. We need you. Who else is going to fill those old folks' homes? Sorry. But that's what they're doing. A life sentence because they have a right to deport him and get him out of the country. Getting somebody out of the country is a far cry from sending him to that Salvadorian hellhole. So I want the news to focus on that. They won't, so I have to. So those are the two things. So let's get back to this question of all these immigrants coming across the border illegally and just staying in the country. How does that happen? Well, what's wrong? That's Biden's fault. No, it's not Biden's fault. It's the fault of the statute, and the Republicans have not a single Republican in the House or the Senate has introduced any legislation to cure the problem. Here's the problem. Under the statute, and I know this because I litigate these cases, under the statute, to seek asylum, you are required to be in the United States or at a port of entry, like at the border. So you're required to be here. So what they should do is they should have a citizen saying you can't apply for asylum in this country, be in the country unless there's some extraordinary circumstances which they could spell out. Have them apply for asylum at the U.S. Embassy. Just like you do for a green card. Apply at the U.S. Embassy. And in your country. And if we don't have relations with your country or it's too dangerous, then at a bordering country. Right? That would solve that problem. The second part of that problem is that once you're screened at the border. If you come in and say I'm seeking asylum, they ask you a series of questions. Well, everybody knows what the questions are. And the coyotes, they prepare you for those questions. And if they answer the questions appropriately, then guess what? They have to release you into this country because they can't turn you away. They can't send you back to your country of origin because you've already said you're facing discrimination there. Threats of violence and et cetera, mainly violence. If you go back. So they can't send you back. Once they make a determination that you are here appropriately, that you're fleeing the country of origin, they can't send you back to your country of origin, and they have no ability to send you anyplace else. Right? So, except possibly, Mexico for a while, we had this agreement where we could send them back, and they were in those camps under the bridges, and it was horrible. People were being raped there. And he talks about people being raped. Yeah, they were. But without an agreement from another country, there's no place to send them. So what they have to do is by law, they have to release them into the United States. And that's where all these people are coming. Now, most of these people who are coming over like that have some sort of affiliation. They have family here, or they have jobs here, they have friends here, they have places where they can go. They're not just coming in here and then hanging out, in the street corner or sleeping in the parks. And most of them, work. They listened to Michael Smirkanich the other day, and he was like shocked he didn't realize that people would hang out at Home Depot, day laborers. Well, there's day laborers all over in California, almost every street corner, every day, waiting to be picked up, and people pick them up and take them to their homes and construction sites, and they work very well. Everybody speaks highly of these people. They get paid a lot less than union wages. Which is why they get picked up, but also because most of these, you can't just go find some union guy to come and work on your house. So most of them are productive people in this country, but that's where you get these huge numbers of people coming across the border. They are here legally. They're not here they came across illegally, but they remain here legally. And the only way you can change that is to change the statute. And I don't hear anybody on any shows talking about this, the problem with the American statutes, which create this problem, or whether it's an actual problem or not. That's, like I said, most of these people are here. They're sponsored. They have friends. They have contacts. They work. They pay taxes. They pay Social Security, which they never receive. And so it's a question of whether it's even a problem. Yeah, the people on the right just, these people are here and they shouldn't have a right to be here. And that's as far as they look. But there's a lot more to this whole question as to whether or not they actually should be here, whether we should change our immigration laws to allow them to remain here and not treat them as criminals, so that the anti-immigrant crowd can say, they're criminals. They're criminals. These people, they criminals. They committed a misdemeanor. They don't know what crime they committed. They have no idea. They just love saying it. It sounds good. So that's enough of my rant for today. But it's because it's an area in which I deal, and I hear the misinformation, the distortions, and the failure of the rest of the media to pick up on these issues and discuss them in any kind of detail, and to rebut the assertions being made by the people who want to get rid of these illegals. It's just total silence. So I think the silence is what upsets me more than anything. So hopefully you won't be silent. So I speak my mind, and whatever happens, happens. But it's one way. It's a way in which I sort of, I guess, let off some of that steam for which I'm so famous. So, having said that, have a happy Easter, Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating, and I'm actually going to go out and I'm going to eat an egg. That's right. I celebrate Christmas. I celebrate Easter too. Yes, in my own way. Au revoir.